Hey, yeah, I'm talking to you. Thanks for joining me on the Rundown with Ramon with Black Enterprise. And we try to do one of two things. And we've been doing it, Chris, a few shows now. And so I hope we do it well. We try to make your life better or make your business better. But I'm so glad you're with me today on the Rundown with Ramon, where we're going to talk to Chris Cheetham West. And we're going to talk about digital marketing, finding your customers. You know what? And probably a lot more. This young man has been around the block a few times and knows a thing or two about life and business. So that's what we're going to talk about today on the Rundown with Ramon. Again, my name is Ramon Ray. Started 5 small businesses, sold 3 companies, like to work on a variety of projects and a lot of cool things. You can get to know me better at RamonRay.com. But again, sit back and relax, but don't relax too much as we share with you on the Rundown with Ramon. Chris, thanks for joining, man. What's going on in your world? How are you?
Oh yeah, thanks for having me. So just trying to stay busy. So excited to be here. So thanks for reaching out. So
You're welcome.
Always a fan of your work.
And I try to stay busy too. Thank you. I wake up in the morning like, I ain't got nothing to do today. Maybe I'll just dig a few ditches or something, just because I'm bored now. Never that. But good to see you, Chris. Chris, why don't you spend a minute and tell us a bit who you are, what you do. Feel free, if you don't mind, repeat your full name, give us your website, but tell us a bit for those who have no clue who Chris is. Tell us who you are, Chris.
Okay, great. Full name, Chris Cheetham West. And my name website is chrisinwest.com. So I've been a professional speaker and author for a while now. So I started off way back when I had my first job at Google as a marketing specialist. And we would go around the country and just educate small business owners on how to use Google Analytics, Google Maps, all that stuff. So eventually I was like, you know what? I actually like this presenting thing. I like to go out and present. I just like to see people's faces when they find out a strategy that they can use and they can grow. So ever since then, I was deciding, let me start my own business. And I have a business called LR Training Solutions. We do corporate training on Google Analytics, management remotely, digital marketing. So we do a lot of different things as far as like corporate training. And I'm a professional speaker, and I wrote 2 books, Digital Marketing for Results, and then Leading in a Virtual World. And so, yeah, so excited.
I love it. I think 1 or 2 of those, Chris, you've had some pretty big props for those or whatever. I follow you. So is that right? Some either 1 or 2 or something people have been putting into some systems, and it's been going pretty well by God's grace.
Yeah. So the first one is like event company picked it up, and so they shared to all their seminars. That's right. It's a pretty interesting process.
Love it. I love it. I remember, I like how you said that, Chris, because you and I, in a similar field as far as on stage and making an impact, when people's eyes are opened, I'm sure I'm making it up about Google Analytics, but I can remember, I'm imagining, how do I see what my website's coming from? How do I see what's happening? And Chris is like, there's this tool called Analytics. Watch. And they're like, oh, wow.
Yeah,
so exactly. My businesses are the smallest of small businesses. I'm teasing when I say this, people, but kind of like hashtags. Watch this. Search on Instagram. Wow, Ramon, that's kind of old school by now, but I'm with the basics of small business, and that light bulb goes off.
You can still get those questions too. Yeah, you can still get those questions. Yep.
Email marketing. I'm like, I do something called a campaign. Wait a minute, Ramon, a campaign? What's that? Let me show you.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so simple. It's a small tip, and it's like, wow, major.
It is. I'm curious, Chris, what are the things, Chris, that you talk to your big billion-dollar clients about that you find, Chris, are applicable to small businesses? I find it's very ironic. Sometimes I was doing a presentation today, systems and processes. I'm preparing a slide. And I said to myself, when I say systems and processes, I know people's eyes are going to glaze over, but I need to convince them that even for a solo business, your systems and processes are important. That's me. But Chris, as a marketer, other things you do, what are some things you're like, you know what, billion-dollar company or 2 girls and a cat in the garage, you need this. Talk to us about that, Chris.
Oh, yeah, of course. It's interesting. Once I started presenting to these the larger billion-dollar companies, I was shocked because some of the same things that small business struggle with, these larger organizations struggle with as well. So, for example, let's say, for instance, you start a business and you read a blog and they say, hey, you need to sign up for Microsoft 365. You need to sign up for Google Analytics. You need to sign up for all these tools. And so these same billion-dollar companies are doing that same thing. They might sign up for Microsoft, Google Suite of apps. And then guess what? They don't really utilize it to its full capacity. So maybe they say, you know what? Let me use Microsoft Teams and I'm only going to use it for the chat. In reality, there's so many different other aspects of that tool. So that's the same concept when it comes to small businesses. If you're a small business, yeah, it's good to sign up for all these tools, but I would encourage you to figure out how can you learn everything there is about that tool so you really utilize it for your business. So, I mean, when it comes to small business, you have like analytics, right? So everybody knows that, hey, you need to know what traffic's coming to your site. You need to know that. That's the basics. But what if you take it a step further and find out, all right, what pages are they leaving on? Or how much time they're spending on their site? Or what's making them leave? So all the tools that these small businesses are getting right now, there's so many different levels to it. I mean, you know this as far as like email marketing as well. There's more to it than just the open rate. You have to figure out what other data is there, and also how can you make the decision to move forward to improve your business? Not just looking at what's going on, not just looking at the data, but how can you actually grow? And I think that's when small business can handle, like whatever tools you have out there, how can you grow in that tool? Maybe you have a team member or assistant that can really learn more about it to make everything more productive.
I love it. Chris, I'm going to play a game with you, Chris, that I never played before. This is the first time, Chris, that I played it on the Rundown with Ramon. In fact, Chris, I never played it in my whole life. I'm getting my pen and paper ready. You're at a disadvantage because you don't know the rules and you have no clue what I'm going to do, Chris.
Okay.
But we're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
So, Chris, first, give me guy or girl? Guy or girl?
I'm gonna say guy.
Guy. Okay. I'm going to give the next answer, Jeremy. Bagel, cars, bagel or cars?
I'm gonna say car.
Cars. What happens to fun here? New York City or Miami?
Miami for sure.
All right, Chris. Here's a scenario. There's a guy named Jeremy who has a car shop in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to help him right now, Chris, in his business. So let's talk, Chris. You're the marketer. You've done this zillions of times for others. As you think back at the average, and I know people, there's no average small business, but let's kind of what we just went into. Let's talk about maybe some of those marketing stacks or things you would say. Let's talk to two. And I probably need notes to keep in memory what I'm saying. Sometimes, Chris, you and I have never interviewed before. I asked like 47,000 questions in one.
It's okay.
Good. Thank you. What I'm trying to get at, let's talk to Jeremy, the guy who has a car shop in Miami, who's just starting. He ain't got nothing. So let's talk to that beginning, Chris, and then let's talk, maybe it's the same thing, but let's pretend the guy has been in business 10, 20 years. You get the game I'm trying to play here.
Okay,
so
got it. Okay.
Just starting out, he ain't got nothing. He's like, Chris, I just signed my lease. I'm going to open next week. What is Chris going to tell him? And I'm going to write some notes.
Okay, sure. Okay. Yeah. So he's just starting out in Miami. So that's a great question. I would say, of course, congrats on opening the business. I know that's a tough thing, small business ownership. So I would say first things first is think about who is your audience. Who is the audience? Who's he trying to reach? Is it all of Miami? Is it South Beach? Is it another area that people are aware of? Is it downtown Miami? So that's what I'll say, okay, what area do you want to serve? That's the first thing. Two, I would say, do you have a website? And I would say, okay, if you needed a website, one thing you want to do is get the website and think of that target audience in mind. So we know that you probably want, let's just say you want a car dealership on South Beach, so we know that. Let's say, for instance, you're looking for people that are, 25 to 45, 25 to, this is just 25 to 45. Cool. All right. So you got this website, and now guess what? You want to talk specifically to these people. So you want to talk specifically people that live in that area. And what does that look like? That looks like a picture in Miami by South Beach. That looks like a picture of people having fun. That looks like a picture of people in their car that you're selling as well. And so that's what that looks like. And not only that, but of course, people would need to read content, right? They want to read about the business. So that's when you create paragraphs, you create topics about that specific customer, and you want to speak directly to them. Maybe you want to talk about, hey, enjoy this ride in South Beach while you enjoy your friends and family, and other topics as well. And so I mentioned that because guess what? People are going to be searching for cars in Florida, right? But they're not just going to type in Florida cars. What are they going to type in? They're going to type in
cars in South Beach.
Yeah, car dealerships in South Beach. Yeah, so they're going to car dealerships in South Beach. So you want to have your content centered around that specific target. So when people land on it, not only are they going to land on it because they searched that term, but also they're going to land on like, hey, this person's talking specifically to me. This is who I want to talk to. These people aren't located somewhere in San Antonio, Texas, and they have a branch out here, but this person started out And then guess what? Another thing you can do is, of course, Raymond, you know this, tell the story. How did you start? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is the story behind that brand that just got started? Because guess what? These days, people want to connect with other people. They want to connect on a personal level. Like, who is this person that has this business? And what is their story? Why they started? You know, that's going to have that on an emotional, that's going to have that emotional connection. Because it's interesting because when we were looking, my wife and I were looking for houses, and many times we would go there to the person that's the realtor or the person that's selling, and they'll tell us exactly, they'll use the word home. They wouldn't use the word house. I was like, why are they not using the word house? You know, it's like they'll use the word home. I'm like, on the way home, we're like, that's why they're using the word home, because it connects on a personal level. It's like, home, what do you want in your new home? And not only that, they'll tell us a story about what they did and how they experienced when they found their first home.
So they had you crying, like they were like, Chris, when we got our first home.
Yeah, exactly.
Chris, and you and your wife in the car crying like, we gotta buy it.
Yep. Finally, right? Yeah. So think about what's the target. Love and it. Speak directly to them, have that story. And for those searches, when people search, you want to know that, okay, people are typing in South Beach, Miami car dealership. And so not only that, I'll find out exactly what people are searching. Are people that are searching Miami car dealership, or they're searching South Beach downtown, dealership? What exactly are they typing in? And then you know exactly where to go with that.
I love that,
Those
Chris.
are the first things.
No, I love that, Chris. Let's push back into this. Story. Maybe people don't care about why I started it. I mean, they just want a darn car, Chris. They just want to pay the car, get financing, go and come. Does it really matter that I tell them, listen, I'm from New Jersey, and me and my wife, we had a flood in our house, and so we moved to Miami, and therefore we got an SBA loan. We started our business. We've been here for 7 years, and we're happy to be here. There's a picture of my baby and my wife, and come on by. Do I have to do that, Chris? But people just want to buy a car.
You got to do it. Yeah, you should do it. You're missing out. You don't have to do it, but guess what? You're missing out. You're missing out on that connection. And then guess what? A competitor is going to do that same thing, and guess what? They might close that deal because they made that connection with the customer. Story is important.
Yes, story is important for the connection. I love it. And then you talked about also the also who is the audience? Why is that important, Chris? Why can I say we sell cars to Floridians? I mean, I don't want to miss out on the market, Chris. I don't want somebody in the really edge of Florida, wherever Florida is, I don't know, near Georgia, near somewhere down there. What if they miss out? So do I have to be that narrow, Chris, at this stage? I'm just starting off and go to South Beach. Why can't I say, better yet, Chris, everybody who wants to eat oranges, or everybody who likes beaches? Why don't I just broaden it, Chris? Tell us.
Yeah. I mean, you can broaden it, but that's not the way you want to go early on. It's like, if you look at many businesses, they might have all these products and services and serve all these people, but guess what? When they first started, most likely they had that target, and then they mastered that, they got good at that, and then they might have branched out to these other places. And the good thing about that is, I get that question about when you're like, as far as targeting and your website, guess what? That's why your website has multiple pages. That's why you have all these pages on your site, and you can add pages, but like the main page can have that core audience. So yeah, of course, that's a good question. You want to make sure you're targeting, you have more people, but you still want to have that core base. And it's interesting because I read this article one time, a long time ago, and it really changed my perspective. So let's say, for instance, you have a marketing company, and let's say, for instance, you people that have like a storage businesses. So all these storage businesses, they need help with marketing, right? They need help. Are they going to go with the marketing company that specializes in storage marketing, or are they going to go with the general, business? I was like, oh, that's true. They're probably going to go with the people that work with us, and they know our problems, they know our challenges, and they know that what we need to do. They know exactly. So, and that's what you always want to think about. It's like, you're always going to lose out to people that are specialized in that audience.
I love that, Chris. I'm going to ask you a political question, Chris. I don't really like to bring politics into it, Chris, but I'm going to go there, Chris.
Sure.
Chris, I'm going to go there. Listen, man. The youngins are saying it's all about TikTok and everything, Chris. So do I have to have a website, Chris? I mean, we got IG, Facebook, Pinterest. I don't want to get you in trouble with your church or your lady or people around you. So I don't like to talk politics that much, but Chris, I'm going to go there. Do I have to have a website? Because everybody's saying it's just scrolling, doing TikTok videos, and I'll get a ton of money. Chris, isn't that a bit old school? Do I have to have a website, Chris?
Well, what about the person that's doesn't have a TikTok? What about a person that only uses Google right now?
But everybody has
That's what you want to think about too.
Everybody has TikTok, don't they? Everybody.
Yeah, yeah, so that's what you think about. It's like, do people only on TikTok? Some people, they still only go Google and they only want to see your website. And guess what? That's great and all. The TikTok, get on there, have a great time. But guess what? You still want to have a place where everything is there. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, all your stories, all your products and services in one place. So guess what? If I'm in a library and I leave my phone in the car and you tell me about your business, you say it's on TikTok. It's like, okay, that's great, but I don't have my phone. That's great. I don't.
And I was teasing you, but Chris passed the political question. Everybody, he passed it.
Yeah.
But Chris, you're right, because I think that, again, I don't have any whatever the fancy people call empirical or scientific, whatever research on this, but I'd like to know what you think, Chris. I find, at least in my household, yeah, as you know, Chris, me and you are digital people. We're online, probably got 10 different phones and all that. This is our world. But when I do serious research, like we just got a car, we had to pull the desktop screen up. Yeah, I'll go by and do some clicks, look at my phone. I'm walking through the airport, as you and I do quite a bit. We doing it, but I'm sitting with my lady. We pulled the screen up, 2 screens, and we're like, it's a big purchase. If I'm dropping 10, 20, 30, whatever it is on something. So that's more anecdotal, but I think a good website, I'm with you, Chris. I just wanted to see you. Yeah, everybody should have a good website, but mobile friendly and have the apps. We have the social, but website, I do not think is old fashioned. That's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. Just like your website, right? Your website, I went to it, bam. What he's doing, he's speaking. It has a him, his suit, his brand, speaking. I know exactly what he does. I know right when I land. And same thing for your business too.
Absolutely. And to that point, though, Chris, let us touch on social a bit. I do think it is important, not that we'd ignore it. I mean, social, I happen to be in, Chris, like I'm a marketer. I do this, not for people, different sides, but I'm a marketer. I get it. It can be overwhelming, Chris, and it'd be too much to ask you to give a 2-minute, social media one-on-one. But what are you finding? Drop some science on us. What are you telling the bigger clients that we can learn as far as social media? Clearly, it's important, as Gary Vee would say, to get attention and trust. I think that's important. Anything you're learning, anything you're saying, Ramon, don't do this, or here's a few things to consider doing. What are you finding, Chris?
Yeah, I would say consider it's a tried and true advice as far as making sure that your audience is on that platform. So just like I said, it can be overwhelming. So that's why it comes down to that audience. Like, who's your audience? And then it's like, is the audience really on this platform? So it's like if it's a professional audience, maybe LinkedIn might be the platform, Instagram. And then not only that, but making sure that your audience is there, but also making sure that you're still targeting your audience while you're on there. And that means the words that you use. So for example, if you're targeting a like corporate audience, use the words that they use, use the type of terminology that they use so they can connect and they can say, you know what, this business is for me. This person, they know what my challenge is. They know what I'm struggling with. I want to work with this person. And so just in general, you still want to build that trust. You still want to have a variety of content, such as like not just selling all the time, but selling, educating, showing who you are, your story, and then also just showing them exactly how can you help those people. So, and then at the end of the day, consistency as well. So pretty much tried and true advice as far as like what we've been hearing for past years is like consistently, and then making sure you're connecting with that audience.
I love it. Everybody, this is Rundown with Ramon. I'm Ramon Ray. You can get to know me better at RamonRay.com. I'm here with my friend, Chris Cheetham West. Chris, one more time, tell us how to find you. And feel free to talk to us a bit about what you do, who you serve, as we take a short break here. I feel like I'm, on, Oprah Winfrey show, but I'm on the Ramon Ray show. But Chris,
yes, ChrisInWest.com. Yep. Instagram is at Chris in West. LinkedIn, Chris Cheetham West as well. So yeah, again, I provide corporate training services, author and speaker, and we provide topics such as in Google Analytics, management, and also social media. So, yeah.
I love it. And Chris is one of the best of the best. I think he was just rated the 3.5 top digital marketers in the world. I think if you don't include Mars, I think he got up to 2. I read some of the stats, but he's pretty big. He's up there.
There we go. There we go.
Chris, I love that. Anything you have for us, Chris, talking about those who've been in business for a while. And I find that, Chris, I think you were talking before we recorded, a lot of these things are very similar. What you're talking to the big business, small business, there's some overlap. But I'm curious, talking to the business owner who's been there for about 10 years, 5 years, talking to who? A guy named Jeremy who's selling cars in Miami. Chris, he's doing pretty good. His business is humming along pretty well, but he's coming to Chris. He just flew you down to Miami, Chris, in his corporate jet. He paid your full fee. What is it now? 50, 75 for the day, something like that, Chris. What are you telling them, Chris? He gave you a whiteboard and said, Chris, I'm bringing my team in here. I got 1 or 2 marketers even on staff. What do I need to know, Chris, or do better that you may want to share with us? Talk to us.
Oh, yeah. So that's once you're at that level, that's when you want to think about what areas I struggling with and what areas are my competitors struggling with. So, for example, the good thing we talked about, like social, we talked about like digital. But one thing I've noticed that many businesses on that size can do is find out what area that their competitors are struggling with and what they're not doing. Then you could take advantage of that. Let's say, for instance, your competitors are all on social media. They're killing it on social media, but guess what? They're struggling when it comes to online advertising. They're struggling when it comes to search optimization. That's when you come in and take advantage of the market share. So I would say, hey, you know what? You're doing good on social media, but guess what? Your competitor is doing good on social media. You're doing good when it comes to Twitter. You're doing good when it comes to LinkedIn. Now, let's look at, wow, none of your competitors are really killing it when it comes to search optimization. They're not killing it when it comes to the online ads. Let's move your team. Let's make sure your team is spending some budget on there, spending some time, and really becoming a leader in that area. And, it's like these strategies I've used back when I had an internship. I was doing SEO for a church, and we were able to get on number 1, the first page over mega churches because of that. Like all the mega churches were just focusing on in-person outreach, which is great, but nobody was looking at the online searching and all that other stuff as well. So I would say,
curious, do you remember the keyword, a theme that you were started? Would you remember where you were going, exact words or relatively overall? Anything that you remember on that?
As far as, it was like San Antonio Church. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was literally like, yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So I was like, wow, over all these bigger churches. So it's the same thing now.
I like that, Chris. It seems to me the advice I'm hearing is that, again, I'm sure you could go much longer into it, but as you're starting out, it seems like there's a lot of brass tacks pillar thing that you have to do that everybody's doing. These are just, we're all doing it. But it seems like once you reach a certain level, Chris, and maybe even things you're telling your clients or other marketers, after you reach a certain level, you've been there, done that. You got that going well. Now it's fine tuning. It's, here's a pocket, there's a hole, and we can get 1 or 2%, 3% better our margins or something. Is that a fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. And the challenge is like so many small businesses, they're struggling to get to that level that we're talking about right now. Though. So yeah, so you know the deal. So yeah. So I'd say once you do get to that, that's when it's time to fine tune and really figure out how can you grow and like get more of the market share in your area, maybe your local, your state, regional, or national as well.
I like that, Chris. And it reminds me even of our, again, we do slightly different things, but even as speakers, right? I think at a certain level, by God's grace, and I do mean that, you get to a certain level, I can always learn, Chris, always. But I must say that some maybe the brass tacks or basic things that our fellow peers who just started a bit nervous, no, I'm not nervous anymore. I know how to hold a mic. I got all that. But there's some things. Oh, okay. Let's say Chris, he excels in this. Maybe that's not me. I can ride this if I'm hearing, and I think we all. I bet even athletes, we all know how to catch the ball now. We got that.
Exactly.
But here's where I can fine tune my training in these areas, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I agree. There's always room to grow, and there's always new technology, always new platforms, always new channels to take advantage of, always new opportunities to like really go after and grow. So I definitely agree with that.
Nah, for sure there are, Chris. I really love this very much. I find that also, Chris, talk about when it comes to hiring somebody to help you in your business. This is a struggle. I know that many smaller businesses, the number of tools that I use, Agora Pulse, and I think TweetDeck may still be around, and a number of other Sprout Social, other tools that you can help to scale you a bit. But I think the jury's out. Maybe another political question. Some people are saying as you grow, you should probably do it natively. That's a whispering I'm hearing that you should really push it directly. But I think those tools help you do it. What I'm trying to get at, Chris, can you talk a little bit about when it's time to hire? And again, not like a $20,000 a month engagement, but I think a fair number, is between 1,000 or 3 as you're starting. Does that sound, you're nodding, good. So let's talk about that number first. Is that a fair, or would you say more?
Yeah, I'll say that's fair. Okay. It's like, I think you got to think about where do you want your business to go? So do you want a larger business? You want a smaller business? Or do you want the business just to be you? Me and I, we met people, like they may have a high revenue business and they're just doing it by themselves because that's how they specifically want it, right? They don't want to have to manage people. But I would say if you wanted to go that route, I would say figure out what are you doing that can be repeated by somebody else. That's kind of taking up so much of your time that you can focus on the big picture items. Yes. So for me, like I have about a team of like 7 people right now. And the first thing I thought of, what are the random stuff that I'm doing that I've been doing for the past year or so that if I give to somebody else, I can focus on the most important, which is the revenue generating activities, right?
You hear that all the time. Revenue generation. Yes.
Yeah. What's going to make me money and what's going to make the company money, and how can, because as the owner, you only have so much time. And so do you want to spend all your time like doing the paperwork, say all your time shipping products when you can just hire somebody else? So that's the first thing I'll say too. And the second thing is, like, as far as you're trying to find somebody that you can train them, and then they can easily connect. They easily understand your business, or maybe they don't understand your business, but you can train them on how to understand your business. And then they have good communication skills as well.
Yeah, so I think that's very powerful. And Chris, any thought on agency versus solo? And maybe this is too minutia of a question, but just curious. I know for me, I've done both, and pardon me, I'm to the point where I think I'm going agency route for some of the things I'm doing. I'm not a big company. I'm still below 5 million in revenue, which I know is broad, but I'm not a huge business. But I found that the solo business owner, for some things, is working well. But for my social media, sometimes that integration of editor, copywriter, project manager person to kind of, I don't have to think, like people don't have to ask me questions. Like there's somebody looking about it. I think that's where an agency may come in. But what are your thoughts as you're advising smaller business?
I think it depends. I mean, agency, you might pay a little bit more, but it's like, the good thing about having like the person is like you could talk directly to them. You can like kind of train them. You can work with them, and maybe they're giving more at the time. But I feel like if it's like a larger project, that's when the agency can kind of have those resources. They might have those connections that you need in order to like grow your business or grow into a certain area. Maybe like an ad agency, they already have the connections versus just hiring an ad person. So I think that's what it comes down to, like those needs. Yeah. I think it's always good to try out what you want. And then when it comes to hiring, you're not going to hire the best person the first time, as this too, is like, you're going to have to go through, you're going to go through people. You're going to try to figure out what you need, what you want. It's like what somebody's good at. And it might not be the best fit the first time. So just keep trying out different types of people, different types of tasks, and then get comfortable with delegating. Get comfortable with just saying, hey, I'm going to let it go so I can focus on the bigger task, which is going to grow the business. And that's the hard part oftentimes. It's like, we want to have our hand in everything, what I'm saying? Like, even me, like sometimes I'm like, you know what? Let me just let somebody do it and trust that they can do it, and then see how it turns out, where I can focus on the most important task at hand.
Yes. No, that's so important, I think. And again, this goes back to business fundamentals, way beyond marketing. I think that delegation, I'm looking at my notes here, hiring. Yeah. You're hiring the right person. It's hard, but I think if you let go, I find that delegation works in 2 areas, Chris. I find that one is time. So whether me and Chris can do it the same, but I can give it to him because it's more time, and their expertise. I've spent like 47,000 hours on WordPress backend trying to find out how to change the A to an E. I can't find it. When I hire my boy, or Chris was doing it, whatever, like done. Yeah.
Done in 5 minutes. Why are you doing something else?
Yeah, 50, 75, 150 an hour, which are not unusual rates for people I work with at a high level, but it's well worth it. It's done. By the time my email's done. So
done deal. And you're working on something more important.
Yes, absolutely, Chris. No, I really appreciate it. Chris, one more time, if you don't mind, Chris, give us your website. And the reason I do this, Chris, and to the audience listening, for those who listen to the whole thing, I appreciate it. But people have short attention spans. Some people could have cooked away. And I give my thanks to the experts who are on here. I hope you work with Chris. I hope you look his website up and see maybe, and even more importantly, sometimes refer. Maybe you can't use Chris, but maybe you can say, hey, I know somebody can refer him. So I'm just telling everybody, first time I did it like this, that's why. And as you're doing interviews, maybe it's a tip for you. If you're interviewing me or you're interviewing Chris, sometimes that repetition is nice. But Chris, one more time, give us your website, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. ChrisInWest.com. ChrisInWest.com. Also on Instagram at ChrisInWest. LinkedIn, Chris Cheetham West. And also provide training service on digital marketing, Google Analytics, managing teams remotely. And so I'm here to help. My team is here to help. And we look forward to working with you.
Absolutely. So it means if you're in a company and that company is like busted, like you don't know what to do. Oh, you know what? There's this guy named Chris that was on the Rundown with Ramon. Could we please have him come to our corporation? You know, you don't even need to use the private jet. Chris will probably come first class,
There we
maybe
go.
even premium economy. But Chris, one more thing I want to touch on, if you don't mind, since you've had
Sure.
experience at Google, let's just touch on some Google tools. And again, I know that's a broad word. Google, what it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and yesterday is a whole different company. But can you talk about that, Chris? What are some things that you learned from having been there, or even now, what you talk about? Drop something on us about using Google beyond just a
Oh yeah. Yeah, sure. It's like there's so many free tools out there. And that's the one thing that we wanted to go over as far as like when I was there, just like going out in the country for like get American Small Business Online, is that there's so many low-cost tools out there for small businesses. So for example, like I mentioned earlier, is like Google Analytics. It's a free tool that can tell you exactly where your people are coming from, what they're doing on your site, why they're leaving, where they came from. You can even see if they're scrolling down or clicking onto another site. I mean, well, I've done 3-day presentations only on Google Analytics. That's how much is in that tool. Yeah, it's crazy, right? And then so like, and then you have like tools like Google Trends. Like each time I wrote a book, I told myself, you know what? I can either think of a title and I can just throw it out there, or I can find out what are people typing in, what's the trending words that people are using. So each of my books, I make sure to go to Google Trends, and it lets me know like, hey, digital marketing is trending more than online marketing. So guess what? I want digital marketing in my title of the book. so same thing for your business. Like if you're trying to think of a topic for your product, or you're trying to think of a product name, or you're trying to figure out, okay, just in general, what should I be marketing right now on my e-commerce site? Guess what? Go to Google Trends. It'll tell you exactly what's trending at the moment versus other keywords that you can take a look at.
And Chris, I love that. Is trending words the same, similar as keywords of a website? SEO is in the same, maybe different side of the coin, but similar or totally different? Is that
no? Yeah, it's pretty same, pretty much same. Yeah,
got it. No, and that is powerful, Chris. I must say that as you may know, I'm working on. I can't remember everything I'm doing, Chris. I'm doing so much some days.
You're staying busy. And that's good.
But zoneofgenius.com, one of my newest companies that I'm building projects, zoneofgenius.com, and BWC Daily, BWCdaily.com, all about personal development. Point being, Chris, for my first businesses, they did grow. And as you may know, I sold, several of the 3 of them, but I did that kind of, people say, a smile and brute force, like, 100-word blog posts and me just guessing what my audience wants. Cause I'm a pretty good marketer, copywriting. I've been around the block, but now my team, I'm like, okay, let's see what the data says. So we're using tools like SEMrush or Google Trends and Google, and it's a slower game. But before, as I would do news hijacking, oh, this happened on Twitter, whatever. Now we're like, what do people want? So, but it's a balance. So just to affirm what you said, Chris, definitely.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, newsjacking and all that. Like being a part of the trend. That's what people are talking about right now. And it's interesting because, like, you know what? I went to a conference and they were talking about how Google right now, they give more credit to the new pages that say the word news on it, that are like, weekly news or just in news. Use those words right there, and then Google's going to give you favor because, this is news. Let me make sure to push that higher on the searches versus just a regular blog or article.
Yes. No, absolutely. Chris, anything else you wanted to share? I'm sure you and I could jive, man, for the next 47 days, but it would be our wives and our family be like, you know what? That's a problem, dude. But anything else you wanted to share, Chris? It's just been great having you here. You're a wealth of knowledge and a breath of fresh air. And I hope people do go to your website and follow you. But anything else that I didn't ask that you?
I would just say, make sure whatever you're trying to do out there, get started and stay consistent. If you're just starting a small business, it takes a while, but you got to keep pushing and get to the next level that you're trying to get to. And it's all worth it at the end.
Absolutely. Chris, listen, great to have you with us again. I'm Ramon Ray on the Rundown with Ramon. This is Chris Cheetham West. We definitely want you to visit his website, check out what he does across all the platforms, see how he can help you in your business, training and more, author and more. So dive into all those things he's doing. You can get to know me better at RamonRay.com. And this is the Rundown with Ramon, hosted by Black Enterprise. So definitely hit me up on IG, Ramon Ray Smart Hustle, all the platforms as well, how we can do the show better and what you're getting out of it. With that, thanks for listening to The Rundown with Ramon.